I think we've seen a big growth in the number of CS professionals. It's a very exciting career to come into. For me, I still think the best CSMs are ones that have broader business experience. I think the challenge we're going to see is that a lot of people perhaps that are in customer success are going to feel, well, I don't want to do sales. I don't want to do commercials. I don't want to have these targets. So you're going to see people being challenged with that. So maybe people will shift. Maybe they won't want to stay in. But you'll also see people get uncomfortable to think that they can't do it. And that in itself might cause problems with customers. If your customers start speaking to you as a CSM and you can't talk commercials with them confidently, that could break the relationship. Commercial negotiation skills, sales skills, try and get ahead of it. So I think that the big risk is if we do this wrong, you're going to break the relationships with your customers.
Correct.
You're going to overload our CSMs. Our existing processes won't be able to cope with this change. That could impact churn. It could impact loss of business. So you've got to start thinking about that. I think that's the biggest concern. I think it depends on your maturity as a business, your scale. If you're a customer, if you're an organization that's got thousands of customers, expecting your CSMs to do all of this is too much.
Hello to all the listeners. Welcome to another episode of the Scale podcast. I'm your host, Mausmi, and I'm really excited for today's episode because we're going to discuss something which is the current talk of town. Is customer success becoming sales? That's right, it's happening, right? We are all talking about changing perspectives, NRRs going down, people are losing their targets or missing their targets, and all of this needs to be talked about. And it's bringing various pressures on the customer success teams across the board. So we'll talk about increasing focus on sales. We'll also talk about CS executives having sales quota and, of course, the future of customer success. And to talk about all of this, I have as a guest here Jason Noble. He's a recognized industry leader in CS and customer-led growth. Over the last 20 years, Jason has held leadership positions in various roles. And he also runs his own podcast, which is pretty popular, the Jason's Take On. Thank you very much, Jason, for being here today. It's great to have you on our podcast.
Great to be here. Big thank you for having me on the podcast. So excited to be here. I think this is a topic that is top of mind for everybody, and lots of different views on it, but there is a theme, absolutely, and I think it's a very worthwhile topic to talk about. So super excited to talk about this.
Awesome. So Jason, before we start, before we get into our discussion, I typically always like to know, how did you land up in customer success?
It's really interesting because I think for me, it was a natural evolution into customer success. As you said, I've spent 20, maybe a few years more, years in roles that have been customer facing. I've built and led the traditional, as we call them, the traditional post-sales parts of the business. So support, service delivery, project management, account management. But what I always have been doing is helping the companies I've been working for to be more customer centric. How do we add more value and grow value for our customers? And how do we build those relationships? And we've always done it. I mean, even if I go back to the start of my career many moons ago, at the first tech company I was with, it was a fintech company before we did fintech. But we were doing the same thing. We were trying to grow the relationships and the value that we were delivering with customers. So it wasn't called customer success, but everyone was working towards the same objectives. And I think what we've seen, the position I've been in is I've had experience in all of these different roles. I understand the challenges for the customers. And for me, that evolution into what we call customer success now and into a formal customer success position was a really natural thing to do. And I think I've been really lucky and privileged to be part of this change as it's been happening. And in a great, I'm in London. The community here is amazing. I've got some really good friends, other leaders that I know. Myself and Jason been doing the podcast for 6 years now. But it seemed the timing was just right. But it felt like a real natural shift for me. And I was lucky to have a few positions with organizations that that were looking for someone like me to come in and help them make that change. So I'd say almost I've always been doing this, but probably over the last 10, 15 years, it's kind of morphed into what we call customer success now, but the principles have always been the same.
Correct. First principles do not change.
Absolutely. They might evolve, and it might be more industry and team spread, but I think you're right. First principles don't change.
I am lucky actually today that I have you on the podcast and I get to pick your brain on the current discussions that is going on. So, recently there was, of course, there are many other surveys coming on, but G2 came up with a survey of state of customer success. And what caught my eye, and I think it also caught Jason Lemkin's eye from SaaStar, and he also tweeted about it, is that the survey says that 67% of customer success executives report that they have sales quota. And almost 53% of the people surveyed, they believe their primary job role is now sales. And this is something which really caught my eye because it's kind of a change which is happening a little faster. Of course, you always are aligned to revenue, but having quotas and having this, are we going in the right direction? Is it a panic response? How much to go and what is the distance? So a lot of questions around that, right? A lot of things that I really want to discuss. But first, I would like to know, what do you think about this topic, and what is, what is your point of view in terms of the increased focus on sales right now?
I think one of the challenges we've got is what people think of as sales. And most people think of sales as acquiring new business, and you've got a sales team that do this. The reality is, when we're working with existing customers, we are always selling services to them. When you do a renewal, or when you work through the process of renewal, you're selling the value of that next year or period of services. When you're looking at new services and expansions, you're selling new value to them. So I think there's been a challenge around what we think of as sales. And I know there's been some great people who've talked about, we're all in sales. Everybody is focused on making sure our customers stay with us and get value with us. You can say that everybody in sales. So is there really a post-sales anymore? Are we all part of pre-sales? Are we all helping do that next sell? So I think for me, there's a terminology, and to say, is customer success now sales? I think that statement itself causes some confusion, because we are absolutely, what we're trying to do as customer success professionals is make sure our customers get the value they want, perhaps quicker than they would have done on their own, and to make sure that we're delivering to them what they need and expect. And if we are delivering that and they're getting the value that they want from us, they will renew. And if those new services that we're building deliver more value for them, they will buy those new services. So I don't think it's something new. I don't think it's something to be scared or worried about. I think it's a natural maturing of the function and realizing what we're doing. I think one of the challenges that I see is you still have organizations where you have a split between a customer success function and an account management function. For me, I don't like that. Where I've experienced this, it causes friction. If I'm the customer, I want to know that I can speak to my customer success manager, who I've got a relationship with, about anything. Why does my customer success manager have to then say to me, oh no, I don't do anything to do with commercials or renewals? Speak to your account manager. And your account manager then doesn't have that same focused relationship. That account manager probably speaks to you once a year, once every 2 years. And so that in itself, that model feels broken and disjointed. I'm much more a fan of my customer success team being commercial, having them trained up to be commercial, understand how to have commercial negotiations, and own the renewals or the upsell. For me, the renewal is a process. If the customer's getting value from us, if they're getting growing value and the renewal makes sense and we can demonstrate the value to them, and I dumb it down, but the renewal is a tick box exercise. It's a process. Why do I need to bring somebody else in in my organization that won't have that same relationship, I don't think that works. So I'm sorry, it's lots of different answers, but I think ultimately we are in a sales role. I think maybe there's an increased focus because there's, with the challenges we've seen with the lack of or the lower availability of capital for investment in customer success.
Yes.
We're having to justify the roles better. And we're not, if you're seen as just a cost center, that in itself raises another problem. Don't be a cost center, be a profit center. How is your role, your function tied to revenue? So I think it's a good thing. And I think we are seeing more and more of it. But I think we've just started. I think there's a lot of organizations that are still challenged with it. As I said, there's a lot that still split the two functions out.
Correct.
And that feels disjointed for me. But I think we will, over time, see the coming together of those functions into more of a commercial customer success function.
In my experience, and in my previous startup that I sold in 18 and the one that I'm doing now, our setup was very much aligned with customer success handling all the existing logo sales. So not the new logos, and that's exactly what you're saying, but all the existing logo sales or within a group, the expansion within the group. So for us, the solution that we were selling before, there were multiple units and you have to spread across. And all that expansion was taken care by CS, and they were one of the most powerful teams in the business because of the fact that they had amazing relationship with customers.
Yep.
And customers would really trust them to take this advice and go ahead. And of course it was in a much smaller scale, but the scale at which the business is run, getting CS teams to have that kind of skill and to be able to do that, that's another challenge, because we don't see that skill so much. And there's always a fear, how will I do sales negotiations and can I really do it? That's one.
I think that's the key thing. It's quite often that there is that, some people say your CSM is your trusted advisor and you can't talk commercials, that breaks the trust. Well, no, it shouldn't do, because
it shouldn't.
They've come to us, our customers come to us because they trust us to deliver a service that's delivering valuable results to them. So the commercial part of that relationship is fundamental to the trust. But I think you've hit on a really key thing there, that it is, are my CS team skilled up? Do they know how to do commercial negotiations? And I've been with organizations where they haven't before. So what you do is get your new biz sales team to help train your CS team. How do you handle commercial negotiations? It's a very natural thing to do. I think what you also said earlier on was about your account management team. If your account management team are tasked with existing logo renewals and new business, where's their priority? How do they spend time? They're by the very nature, their book of business keeps growing exponentially, which I think becomes a challenge to manage. And your new biz team, their skills are in running new business, building new business. That's not your customer success team. Their skill is in building relationships, growing relationships. And I think the two are very different. And I think you've got different people that fit into those. But I think the renewing and the commercial side of existing relationships absolutely should sit with customer success.
I think the terminology that you started speaking in the beginning, it needs to be probably, reframed as sales new business and sales existing customers. Because essentially that's what we are doing in some way or the other.
Potentially. Or do you just call it, do we stick with sales? And we mean sales as new business, and then we have a customer function. I mean, it's interesting. There are some organizations that they're not hiring customer success managers. They're not hiring account managers. It's customer success account managers. I mean, Microsoft, a good example. That's the role they're hiring for. Now, it's a bit of a mouthful for a role, but it's clear that it's got that commercial.
It's everything together.
Yep. And I think that for me actually feels good, because everyone understands what an account manager does. We've had that role for a long time, 30, 40 years, ever since we started working in tech and selling services. Is it that role's evolving? And are we seeing a coming together of customer success and account management? And does that then show, does account management become more, it's still commercial, but it's more customer centric. It's more about relationships than perhaps it was before. And to your point before, do we have new biz account management and new biz sales? And do we have a customer something account management and sales? Maybe.
So, the change in the chatter that we read online and the articles and everything else. Now, it is also at the same time that we see a lot of talk about a number of trends that are coming up. One of them last a year or two, I think, I've been reading about VCs being very strict and being more focused towards profitability rather than just growth. Of course, growth is important, but profits also come in the picture, which was not the case a few years ago. Also, a lot of questions about earning potentials, and especially in last 3-4 months, where all the last quarter results of big SaaS companies that have come out, where people have missed their earning potential. The NRRs have been going down for almost, I think, 4 to 5 quarters slowly for the larger companies, and that's the trend that almost everyone looks at. So do you think that is one of the reasons why, when we started hearing costs are being reduced and a lot of CS teams were being cut down, lots of chatter online that that's not the right thing to do, and now you see the NRRs going down. So do you see all of these trends being sort of affecting CS in certain way, where it's molding it into a certain way for the future?
I think it is. And I wonder if, is it something like the pandemic? I mean, that's 4 years ago, which is just crazy. But is it changes with that? It changes with the way people are thinking. And like we say, VCs are looking for those returns. That capital is not more. But and it is, as we said earlier on, if your CS is a cost function and a cost center,
Of course.
it's quite often something that our your finance team may say that's the one that we have to. I can't see the direct correlation to revenue from that team. And I think, ultimately, every team's got some correlation to revenue.
Absolutely.
And maybe that's the step that's missing. But it's a really, I think there is. I think there's a change in expectations now. We want profit. It's not just growth, but we want profitable growth. And I think if we can tie our customer success teams closer to revenue, you can tie them to profitable revenue. It's not revenue just for the sake of revenue or growth for the sake of growth. It's make it profitable. So I have a good understanding of what the costs are. And sure, I'm what I've said, it's all about trust and relationships. Well, clearly there's a big cost to that. That's people based. You need to look at how you scale those. And there is the digital side of it as well. And we can use technology to help scale that. So I think you've got to look at how do you make it more profitable, not just grow it, but how do you make it more profitable? And that means that we have to look at both the cost side and then the revenue side. And it's when the two of those come together that we see this really deliver the result we want it to.
So, Jason, we talked about the positive things that are possibly going to come with this new perspective. What are the mistakes just going to happen, which, maybe you see or you foresee around yourself, where applying this new, not new is not the right word, this evolved concept of sales, what are the pitfalls that you see is possible if it is not implemented in the correct way?
I think,
or what should one be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, we said earlier on, I think we've seen a big growth in the number of CS professionals. And it's a very exciting career to come into. For me, the best, I still think the best CSMs are ones that have broader business experience.
Correct.
And I'm not saying, people that come into customer success as their first career can't do well. They absolutely can. I've seen people come into it really passionately. They've got the right, not business experience, but the right mindset. I think the challenge we're going to see is that a lot of people perhaps that are in customer success are going to feel, well, I don't want to do sales. I don't want to do commercials. I don't want to have these targets. So you're going to see people being challenged with that. So maybe people will shift. Maybe they won't want to stay in. But you'll also see people get uncomfortable to think that they can't do it. And that in itself might cause problems with customers. If your customers start speaking to you as a CSM and you can't talk commercials with them, inconfidently, that could break the relationship. So we've got to get ahead of this. Make sure as an organization we want to do it. Does it make sense? Make sure that we're communicating the messages to our customers. Make sure we're upskilling our team, like we said earlier on, commercial negotiation skills, sales skills. Try and get ahead of it. So I think that the big risk is if we do this wrong, you're going to break the relationships with your customers.
Correct.
You're going to overload our CSMs. Our existing processes won't be able to cope with this change. That could impact churn. It could impact loss of business. So you've got to start thinking about that. I think that's the biggest concern. I think the opportunity for me is huge because you think of how do I look at a career path for a CSM to start giving people that commercial responsibility. That's career progress. That's exciting for people.
Absolutely.
So I think that there are some risks, but for me, the opportunities and the positives far, far, far outweigh the risks for this. And I think we can manage it. We've just got to get ahead of it and not forget about our people, make sure that we're training them, making sure they're part of the process, look at technology, look at the process to support them, but ensure that we're communicating this properly with our customers.
I have another question, little, digging deeper on that topic. So a lot of people talk about when this discussion of, sales and all of that came in, that maybe within our CS team, we need to create specialized roles. So there's specialized role for onboarding, which already exists at many companies, and a specialized role for a retention specialist, and a specialized role for renewal specialist, and an upsell specialist, and things like that. Now, in my opinion, I don't see it. It's just renaming of the existing roles, in my opinion. I don't see it. And when we are talking CS, I think it should be the same person who has the relationship doing all these things. What is your thought process in this, stream of thought where we are trying to put together like these vertical specific, like dividing the role into different verticals and putting specific individuals involved?
I hate to say it, but it does depend. I think it depends on your maturity as a business, your scale. If you're a customer, if you're an organization that's got thousands of customers, expecting your CSMs to do all of this is too much. I think the specialism, though, comes in more of the operational side. If I have renewals processes, excuse me, if I have renewals processes and the processes around them, the operation side is set up correctly for the different types of customers, the different products, the different journeys, and maybe I have a bigger investment in operational roles, be it commercial ops or ops that help build out the systems and tools for this. That should allow my people, my CS team, to do this. Do I want a CS person that specializes just in renewals? I think that goes back to what the original problem is I bring in an account manager to do renewals. I think the CS role still has to have some generalism to it, but it should be more commercial. So I think you need the back-end processes, and there's more maturity needed in those processes that allow our CS teams to cover these other roles and for that function to expand rather than building out separate roles. Because you could have a CS team that's got specialists for renewals, specialists for everything.
Yeah.
I think that probably scares businesses. It's too much for an investment. I can't invest in it. At what point do I do that? I'd rather grow my team of customer success managers who can cover those different elements. Now, having said that, I mean, I've worked with businesses where we started off with a CS team doing too much. They were doing support. They were doing all the commercial elements, or actually they weren't doing them. No one was doing them. They were doing implementation. So I still think there's some value in splitting out some core functions. Support, absolutely. I think education, training, definitely. Implementation, project management, definitely. But I think when you look at things like renewal and upsell, for me, they're fundamental pieces of what customer success managers should be able to do. So I wouldn't split those out. Those other functions, yes. I would split out, maybe there's a renewals manager or a renewals operation manager that has some of the operational process side of it. That I see value in.
Correct. That is more internal rather than external.
Completely. Because again, if I imagine a customer and I've got to deal with someone day to day for support, I've got to deal with someone about value who's my customer success manager. I've then got to deal with a renewals specialist, and I've got to deal with an expansion specialist. It gets too complicated and it breaks that relationship.
Unless it's a very large customer, for like medium-sized customers, this is just too much.
Completely. And I think then you've got to look at how do you scale it. And that's the other big problem is how do we scale this in the right way that we're not causing burnout for our teams, we are delivering value for customers. But I think it's part of any service. How do you scale a sales team? How do you scale any team? It's the same challenges. And I think, again, there are things that you can do with processes, segmentation that allow you to do that better.
One more question, digging deeper on that, okay, which sort of gets asked a lot. So I have a sales quota and I go and discuss upsell with my customer. Now, previously, when I was having this conversation, customer knew I had no personal gain getting out of this particular thing. But when there is a quota, there's a commission associated. That's the thing with sales as well, right? Sales has a quota and a commission associated. Now, this question is asked multiple times that if I have a quota and I have a commission and I'm talking to the customer, somewhere I lose that leveling field where I was the confident and I had no selfish gains coming out of it. What do you think about this and how do you put this together on a thread?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what we said earlier on. I don't think it does. If I'm delivering value, it doesn't lose the trust. I mean, if you go right back to your sales team, if your sales team are recompensed because they've successfully done a sale, if the customer knows that they get a financial benefit for completing that sale, does the customer not trust them because of that? No, the opposite. The customer trusts them completely. And I think exactly the same applies. I do think, though, I don't like the idea of commission for customer success managers. And what I've implemented before several times very successfully, or when I've implemented it's been very successful, is more of a bonus structure. And it's a team-based bonus structure, so that the CSMs don't get specific compensation for an individual renewal or an individual upsell, but the team do. So if the team meet a target of this many upsells across all of the portfolio, then the team individuals get a bonus as a percentage. And now individually, depending on salary levels, that bonus varies, but it's always the same consistent team bonus, X% across the team. The benefit of that is, I think, what it encourages your customer success team to do is work together. How can I help each other? And if someone's struggling, how do we come together? And I think it's a subtle difference rather than individual commissions. It's a team-wide bonus structure, but you're bonused on those same outcomes. And that, for me, I think makes a lot more sense for customer success rather than thinking of it sales incentives, sales commission. And I think it also, it's a different type of person. It's not a person that's hungry about the commission, hungry about that next deal. What your customer success team want and your sales team want the same is long-term valuable relationships. But it's a different relationship to what the salesperson has.
That's a brilliant way to put this together, Jason, to tie the whole thing together, as in it's a different team and it's a team sport. CS is a team sport. It's not an individual game.
Yep.
And therefore, if we put that together with the bonus structure, giving the right kind of incentives with a team success, it makes sense. And even now, when you don't have quota or bonus, when you go to customer and talk about upsell, you will get some benefit based on the deals that you will bring in. May not be direct commission, but appreciation, if nothing else. Right? So there is always a mutual benefit in a commercial deal.
Absolutely. I mean, the key thing is if a customer, we've sold a service to a customer on the expectation that they're going to get measurable results, value from that service. If a year down the line, they're no longer getting value, they won't renew. But if we've done the right things, if we've delivered what we've said we're going to deliver, they will get value, they will get the results they're expecting, and most likely they will renew. So the renewal's almost, if you're doing the right things, the renewal's an expectation, and it should happen. But it is, like you said, it's a team sport. It's actually bigger. It's bigger than the customer success team. It's all of the team working together to make sure that customer
support,
everything. Absolutely. And I think that, ultimately, if the products and services are doing what they should, the customers will renew. And you can, and again, I'm dumbing down. There are a lot of intricacies in the process, but you could build your renewal into the product. I mean, if you look at, again, B2C is very different, but there are a lot of B2C services that we all subscribe to and we all renew on a perpetual basis, and you never think about it. If that service stops delivering you value, you'll cut it short. But the renewal process is simple, so simple. So I think we need to make sure that we're not overcomplicating things either for customers.
Yes. Last question, with the changing scenario perspectives and how things are, where do you see customer success morphing into or evolving into in next 4 to 5 years?
I think that the key thing is it will become commercial. So it always has been. We're seeing an evolution of it becoming even more so, and a recognition of external environmental factors, economic factors that make it a need to be more commercial and to have even more focus on delivering results and value. And I've always said, and Jason Whitehead and myself talk about it in a number of our podcast episodes, customer success, your team is ultimately there to accelerate that time to value for your customers.
Yes.
Your product should deliver the value, and my customers could probably get the value on their own, but your customer success function accelerates that time to value. So I think we're going to see a bigger evolution of product, more focus on how the products help our customers help themselves. And our customer success teams are going to be more focused about customer-led growth. How do we help our customers grow and use that to grow elsewhere as well? So this commercial shift is absolutely going to become a bigger and bigger impetus for all of us. And I think over the next even 1 to 2 years, we'll see it become the focus of what we're doing. And I think it then becomes one of the big challenges I see is that our customers quite often don't understand customer success. If you can associate it with value directly, it becomes clearer for our customers. If they see it as an evolved version of what they thought account management was, it makes those conversations a lot easier. So I think we will see some changes, but that commercial focus is absolutely front and center.
I think I'll have to do another podcast 2 years down the line to hear more about what has happened with all the things that you're predicting right now.
Absolutely.
And I think we'll get to know, I completely understand and agree with most of the points that you're saying in terms of the way things are changing and how it might move into the future. And I also feel the same way with the word "it depends." I hate to use it, but unfortunately in customer success, it is contextual with the kind of business and the kind of things there is.
Absolutely. There are some very specific nuances in your industry, your scale, your size, that do depend.
Well, thank you, Jason. Thanks a lot for being with us
No
today.
worries.
I really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for bringing a lot of interesting perspective based on your experience. And I think next time we should have Jason and Jason on the podcast.
We would love the opportunity. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much again for having me. It's been a fantastic conversation.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks a lot. And as I mentioned before, Jason has an amazing podcast on customer success. It is called The Jason's Take On. And if you'd like to tune in, I will leave the links in the description below. Jason, would you like to say a little bit about the podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, so myself and Jason Whitehead, my partner in crime with the podcast, we've been doing it for almost 6 years. Had some phenomenal guests. It's all about customer success, customer growth. So yeah, please do listen.
All right, people. You can also connect with him on LinkedIn and on his website. We'll mention all the links in the description. And if you like the podcast, feel free to follow, subscribe. We are available on all major podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, YouTube. See you in the next episode. And if there are any topics that you really want us to pick up with experts like Jason, do drop in. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.